Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Now, Qaanitah Hunter has written an article titled "The Indecisive Ramaphosa and the Consequences of Inaction." This, of course, is noises for President Cyril Ramaphosa to act following allegations of incompetence in the security cluster during the recent violence and looting experienced in parts of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. There's also questions of accountability in relation to Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize. Qaanitah Hunter joins us now via Zoom. She is the political editor for News 24. Thank you so much for making the time, Qaanitah. The noises demanding for action from President Cyril Ramaphosa are growing louder and louder, and you agree in your article.
Absolutely. I think that there has been, a society-wide call for the president to take some action. I mean, just from a sense of filling the vacancies in his executive. There are 3 vacancies in his executive, 2 deputy ministers and a minister. And then obviously there is the unresolved issue around the health minister, which has been, the allegations against him has been in the public domain since February this year. We're now in August. And then there's the issue around this failed attempted insurrection and who should be held accountable. Now, the question is, one may say that the president may think that his executive is doing a very good job and he doesn't think anyone should be removed from their positions. But the other side of it, and that's what I wanted to sort of portray in my column, is that what you have is an indecisive president who sort of, for a long time delays taking certain action, even when he faces the brunt of that inaction and indecisiveness. And the examples that I put forward is in relation to, easy positions that could have been easily filled in his administration in the presidency, for example. I mean, the Director General in the presidency took a year to fulfill that to fill that position. You look at the issue around his spokesperson; it's over a year, and that matter is unresolved. Then you look at senior positions in the security cluster around the State Security Agency without a Director General for years. And there's been another acting Director General put in that position. Yesterday, the news broke that the SSA is now without a domestic head of intelligence, and the head of foreign intelligence is suspended. So these are positions by law the president makes, and it's the president's signature that can be sort of easily put to end the instability in these areas. And so one wonders, why the indecisiveness? Why does the president not want to act, even when he faces the brunt of that indecisiveness?
According to you, should go and who should stay? What do we know about Minister Dlodlo's report? Does it exist? Was it handed over to Minister Cele? And either way, does it carry weight? There are people who are concerned that as South Africa marks National Women's Month, the 2 women who could be facing the chop are Minister Dlodlo and Mabuza Ngakula.
Yeah, so there has been, legitimate questions posed around whether there was an intelligence failure. Now, the reality of it is that ministers don't provide intelligence, right? It's the operational people, it's the technical people. And that's why the argument that I make is that, is it in anyone's interest that you have that level of instability in terms of positions that the president makes appointments on? And yes, the president can wake up tomorrow and decide that he doesn't want Minister Dlodlo in his executive, and that is his prerogative. And I'm coming from the approach to say a reshuffle is not going to solve much. So it will happen or it will not happen. That's his prerogative. But as South Africans, we have to realize that reshuffles, as much as they're important and as much as it needs to happen, when in terms of it affecting us, in terms of for example, the State Security Agency failing or not failing in its job around the unrest that happened in July, or whether the Defence Force needs to be properly resourced, that those are type of things that the president has the prerogative to make those appointments. And what I argue is that whether you have a new minister of intelligence, for example, or whether you have a new minister of defense, that indecisiveness of the president has already caused damage, has already led to 3 years of instability at the State Security Agency, has already led to, him taking a year to appoint a Secretary of Defense. And so one has to realize that perhaps a cabinet reshuffle is not the easy fix, and the real issue that we need to look at as to why is the president so indecisive, and one can even argue that he is afraid of his own power that he has.
You've said quite a mouthful, but how is this all impacted by the return from sick leave by Deputy President David Mabuza?
I think that's completely inconsequential, I suppose, Desiree, because, the deputy president has had an almost muted presence in the 3 years he's been deputy president, almost inconsequential. Some may argue that his presence in important meetings is not even missed. And so I'm not sure whether his return and his nod for imminent movement to the president's, or a reshuffle to the president's executive would be fast-tracked because he has returned. But at the same time, one has to accept that David Mabuza is more absent than present when it comes to his position.
Yeah. Just back to the cabinet reshuffle conversation, reports that new contenders have emerged in the cabinet reshuffle conversation. Do we know who are these new faces?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of speculation that is going on, and concerns around who goes and who stays. The president cannot ignore the SIU reports. You're looking at a new health minister, for example. Is it the deputy minister of health? There were original concerns around bringing people from the outside. I prefer not to speculate on names, but to say that the president will have to look within the current bench of the ANC and current NEC, and so you're not going to find too many people from the outside, particularly because the system does not allow him to do so. The president only has 2 people within his executive to appoint from outside of parliament. One of those positions are already filled. But there's definitely, a sort of indication that there will be a shake-up in the security cluster. There will be movement around, obviously, the minister in the presidency, which almost, is a very, very important position to have an ally there. And also talk that, the acting health minister, Tsane Kubai, has done very well and should be rewarded. And so names around who could be the defense minister has been playing around. And for a long time, there's also been talk around a replacement for finance minister Tito Mboweni. Now, there's all indication that if a reshuffle does happen, it would be, a wider reshuffle, and it wouldn't just be filling off the vacancies. And the president, obviously, for a long time has said to watch the space because he's applying his mind to a broader cabinet reshuffle. Again, I make the point that a cabinet reshuffle, yes, as important as it is inconsequential if it is not followed by a resolution to fill key vacancies in cabinet, not in cabinet, in government, allow for an end to uncertainty. If you take, for example, the issue between the police commissioner and the police minister, that's something the president can intervene in and bring certainty to the South African police service. And the list is endless. And I think that if anything, it's time now for the president to apply his mind and to continue that metaphor, to stamp his authority in government and ensure that there is stability.
Qaanitah, when do we expect the president to come forward? Some people have suggested as early as tomorrow. Do we know?
So in terms of the traditional processes that an ANC president embarks on in terms of consultation before a reshuffle, those processes have not started. It could start today. There is an expectation that it would happen on Friday, but it is, the prerogative of the president. And I think it's one of those cases where unless we, get that email or message from the presidency that the president is addressing the nation, we wouldn't know. But all signs, or at least there's an expectation within the ANC that it will happen tomorrow. But that, again, cannot be confirmed until the presidency does so.
We haven't spoken much about the future of Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, there has been a long, narrative that the president did not even have to wait for the SIU report to take action against him, that there was enough evidence in the public domain for him to realize that there was some sort of malpractice, against the Minister of Health, and that action ought to have been taken months ago. The president, however, insists that he sides on the towards due process, and he waited for the SIU report. It has been on his desk for over a month. What we know now is the contents of that SIU report, which basically shows how the minister was complicit. The minister, was very much part of this illegality around the Digital Vibes contract, and how he has benefited. So one seeks to ask as to what more does the president need to make up his mind that the health minister, Zweli Mkhize, is not fit for the position. Again, like I said earlier, if the president comes out and says, despite the SIU report, I'm fine with him being in this position because politically it's my prerogative, then we can judge him on that. But this sort of inaction and limbo that the country faces in the middle of a pandemic, where there's just simply silence on the fate of the health minister, despite this damning report, it's really worrying.
Qaanitah, thank you so much for speaking to us. Just on a final note, what do you think is the driver of the president's indecisiveness? What are his considerations?
So I mean, for a long time, there was a benefit of the doubt that it is in his nature, and it's actually a positive leadership skill. You would have heard for a long time something along the lines that the president, plays the long game. He's a consensus builder, that he does not like to sort of alienate his enemies. He brings them closer, right? And that has been the narrative since the beginning of his presidency. The reality of it is that we face the brunt of that quote-unquote long game, which I now argue is not a long game, but is actually indecisiveness. And one can say that perhaps his willingness to bring people together instead of antagonize his enemies worked out in his favor. But when it comes to decisions, and like I point out in my column, is that easy decisions that literally would have brought stability to his own office, for example, sorting out or taking a decision around his spokesperson will only benefit him. And so that level of indecisiveness, one seeks to sort of give him the benefit of the doubt, to say, perhaps, yes, there's some good in not making, rash decisions. But at this point, I think that it has become more an Achilles heel than a strength for the president. And when you come to the question of why, I think that it's so much in his nature. And I think frankly, it's an abuse of the goodwill that people have given the president, having bought into this narrative that, he plays the long game, and that he's a consensus builder. He has now been given the luxury of the benefit of the doubt. And I think, one can argue that this indecisiveness is an abuse of that goodwill.
Is it okay to bring in the conversation of Women's Month into this conversation, just in relation to the possibility of female ministers being chopped and not a similar fate for male ministers? And of course, we don't know yet.
I mean, it's uncertain. We can have that conversation when we actually see who gets the chop. But I think it is an important consideration in reflecting on, how some ministers or political heads are judged over other ministers and political heads. I think that there is a fair question to be asked in terms of do male ministers get away with a lot more than their female counterparts? And I think that, I mean, that's a society-wide problem. I don't think it is sort of unique to the Ramaphosa administration, but I do think that that would be an interesting consideration once the axe falls.
Qaanitah, thank you so much for your time this morning. Qaanitah Hunter is the political